Each year at this time, I look back at the lives of some of those we lost last year. As I review the lives of some of these people, I look for qualities they had which may inspire us, and each year themes tend to bubble up. I went back and checked, and it seems I've done this each year since I began serving here. Well, except for last year. Reverend Colin graciously preached the sermon while I was in Kentucky, grieving the loss of both of my parents. I sent him the notes I had made up to that point, which were really little more than names I recognized from publicized lists of the recently deceased. These lists are invariably laden with entertainers, sports figures, and politicians. He understandably wondered aloud what he was to do with such a list, which I think strongly prompts the question, what makes a life successful? A theme that emerged for me this year is appreciating the good qualities of those who may have had success in their chosen field, but will be most remembered for their kindness and humanity. Now, I know I wasn't the only one in this community who lost someone very close to me this year. And I know that while I may find redeeming qualities in more well-known lives to talk about, it's typically those closest to us who influenced us most mightily. And they are the ones we will no doubt miss the most. So, while my sister and I technically lost our parents in December of 2023, I thought it would be odd if I didn't at least give them a shout out today. All the kids at school knew my parents. Mom was room mother in elementary school, helping to organize the Christmas party and outings, and providing homemade cupcakes. Yes, Christmas parties, not holiday parties, because everyone was assumed to be Christian back then. And it was before both parents had to work full-time to make ends meet. And because it was a different time, Dad and I were in Indian Guides, the precursor to Y Guides, in what is now recognized as cultural appropriation. We were awarded feathers for competing projects, and we built a full-size teepee that was displayed at camp to the envy of the other, less ambitious tribes. By high school, they were the quintessential band parents, riding the school buses with the marching band to away games and chaperoning weekend contests. I didn't realize the level of support they were providing me and my siblings until I realized that the parents of some of the other kids never came to even one game to see them march. From the 9th grade play to high school musicals to graduate school, they would be there in the audience. They would drive 2 hours to my college to see me in plays, and would later drive from Kentucky to Fort Worth to see the designs I did for the Miss Texas telecast. The only thing my dad couldn't bring himself to watch was when I did sets and props at the Cincinnati Opera. The Grand Ole Opry was more his speed than people singing loudly in a foreign language. They proudly made the trip to Fort Worth to attend my graduation from seminary, but became too impaired to attend my ordination. But my niece made sure they could watch the live stream from their living room. It would be difficult to overstate how kind and supportive my parents were. Two categories of people I will talk about could have been anticipated by the shopping algorithm on my computer. I've often joked that virtually all the books I buy are theology books, and all the music I buy is original cast albums of Broadway shows. You may remember, but will be forgiven if you don't, that I have mentioned something called process theology on occasion. It jettisons some of what I find the problematic assumed attributes of a deity, but includes some I find more befitting an entity worthy of the concept of God. Plus, I love the idea that it flies in the face of taking the assumptions of others at face value. Because someone says God is defined doesn't mean they are. In fact, the opposite is true. You cannot describe the ineffable. So my concept is no less right or wrong than yours. Well, with one caveat. If your God is hateful, you're unequivocally wrong. Thank you. I didn't know that was an applause line, but I love it. In process theology, it is an essential attribute of God to affect and be affected by temporal processes, contrary to the forms of theism that hold God to be, in all respects, non-temporal, eternal, unchanging, immutable, and unaffected by the world, impassible. Now, my way of simplifying this idea is to think of whatever that divine entity is, continuously drawing us towards the good. But we are the ones who choose. We make decisions. And once our decisions are made and acted on, God takes note, probably rolls their eyes, and begins drawing us toward the good again. God is involved, but is neither a judgmental taskmaster or an ATM in the sky. More like a loving partner who supports and guides us. These are qualities I believe the divine would have. Alfred North Whitehead, the English mathematician and philosopher, created the philosophical school known as process philosophy, which has been applied in a wide variety of disciplines, including theology, ecology, and physics. John B. Cobb Jr., the preeminent scholar in the field of process philosophy and process theology, died on December 26th. He penned more than 50 books. Well known for his transdisciplinary approach, he integrated insights from many different areas of study and was influential in a wide range of disciplines, including theology, ecology, economics, biology, and social ethics. A unifying theme of his work is an emphasis on ecological interdependence, the idea that every part of the ecosystem is reliant on all the other parts. In his 2010 book, Spiritual Bankruptcy, A Prophetic Call to Action, he wrote something that may be even more true 15 years later. Economism is the view that the economy is the most important part of society, and that the other dimensions, such as politics and education, should serve it. Economism has become the ruling ideology, not because of claims of economists, but because of the decisions of political leaders, financiers, corporate leaders, and the general public. Liberation theology is a theological approach emphasizing the liberation of the oppressed. Its roots can be traced to Catholic Action, a movement of lay people within the Catholic Church, which advocates for increased Catholic influence on society and the influence of the Second Vatican Council, which inspired new approaches to addressing systemic poverty and inequality in Latin America. Liberation theology engages in socioeconomic analyses with social concern for the poor. The movement's use of concepts like class struggle and the critique of global capitalism led to significant controversy within the Catholic Church. Pope John Paul II criticized the movement for what he perceived as excessive politicization and the alignment with communist ideologies. Despite this opposition, liberation theology influenced political and social movements across Latin America. The Reverend Gustavo Gutierrez, known as the father of liberation theology, passed away in October at the age of 96. His 1971 book, A Theology of Liberation, is considered pivotal to the formation of liberation theology. He helped popularize the phrase preferential option for the poor which advises that Christian faithful are obliged to promote social justice and assist the poor. Described as a Marxist by his critics and under Vatican scrutiny for most of his career, he and his work were partly rehabilitated under Pope Francis. In what is considered a historic moment, Francis celebrated Mass with Gutierrez in 2013 at the papal residence home in the Vatican, accompanied by the conservative Cardinal Gerhard Mueller. The welcome shown the priest represented a shift in the Vatican's attitude toward liberation theology. In 2007, the group Red Letter Christians was founded with the aim of bringing together evangelicals who believe in the importance of working on issues of social justice mentioned by Jesus. In some translations of the Bible, those words are in red. They point to that text in red and Jesus' example to promote social justice issues, including fighting poverty, advocating for peace, building strong families, respecting human rights, and welcoming foreigners. Tony Campolo, who founded Red Letter Christians along with Shane Claiborne, passed away in November. I find it interesting that both Gustavo Gutierrez and Tony Campolo were often opposed by the Christian right for advocating for exactly what Jesus taught and modeled. Their influence and hard work will be missed. Just as I said, most of the books I buy are related to theology. Most of the music I buy is Broadway original cast albums. I have been blessed in ways I could never have foreseen when my parents were dutifully watching me sing and dance in high school. Conrad and I have been able to go on cruises with and meet some Broadway stars, some of whom I listened to on LPs when I was in high school. On our first cruise, we met Chita Rivera. Performing for nearly 6 decades, she won 2 Tony Awards, 2 Drama Desk Awards, was the first Latina to receive a Kennedy Center honor, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Undoubtedly one of the most talented people to ever appear on Broadway. But in our first reading we heard, "But how kind are you? How likely are you to lift other people up?" When I think of Chita Rivera, I think of an act of thoughtfulness that I witnessed. The cruise organizers would invite cabaret performers to sing at various times in the lounge venues around the ship. She was always gracious to all these local performers who, of course, thought the world of her. Once when she was performing, someone spotted her in the audience and hurried over to ask her for a photo. She said of course she would, but she said she wanted to wait until the performer was finished. She didn't want to distract during someone else's performance. She was kind, classy, and lifted other people up. Chita Rivera passed away in January. On 2 other cruises, we met Gavin Creel, an immensely talented man who had won a Grammy Award, a Tony Award, a Drama Desk Award, and an Olivier Award. But we heard about his kindness before ever meeting him. On a previous cruise, we had met Krista Rodriguez, the Broadway and TV performer. In 2014, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. According to what she told us, well, she knew but wasn't friends with Gavin. He phoned her and said, "I'm going to be your person. I'll take you to the doctor, bring you food, whatever you need." And he did. Gavin was one of those people who just sort of radiated good energy. He was also introspective and meditative. On the last cruise we were on, he had purchased this colorful caftan at one of the ports we stopped at. Thereafter, he could often be seen on the ship, not just at the pool, joyfully cavorting in his new purchase. In July, he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer and died from the disease in September at the age of 48. At his memorial, which was live streamed from the St. James Theater on Broadway, person after person said what an amazing, introspective, joyful person he was. The Broadway inspirational voices with whom he had sung performed. Kelly O'Hara sang How Glory Goes, the song Jolie just sang. Again, from our first reading. To those of you looking to work in professional theater, those of you that are looking to be part of the Broadway community, yes, you should be on top of your craft, but mostly do a deep dive about Gavin Creel's kindness. No one cares how talented you are, but how kind are you? How likely are you to lift other people up? Talent is a dime a dozen, but how you treat people and the impact that you make is what matters. How you treat people and the impact that you make is what matters. This was true of these two performers, arguably more than the chosen professions they excelled at. The same is true of Jimmy Carter, who passed away last week at the age of 100. People disagree about how successful his presidency was, perhaps because it foregrounded kindness and humility rather than the bombast and saber-rattling of his successor. But it is undisputed that he was the most successful former president ever by how he treated people and the impact he made. His legacy was built from his post-presidential life. Unlike other past presidents, he didn't socialize with billionaires, and he declined both paid speaking engagements and invitations to join corporate boards. Hundreds of visitors would arrive at the tiny Maranatha Baptist Church to attend a former president's Sunday school class. Maranatha was formed in 1977 by a group of worshipers from Plains Baptist Church who splintered off when that congregation voted to uphold a ban against allowing black people to join. 1977. But he did more than teach Sunday school. He continued to work toward global peace and meet with international leaders. He established the Carter Center, a nonprofit launched to help eradicate disease. And well into his 90s, he worked with Habitat for Humanity to help build and repair homes. When so many politicians today are so breathtakingly self-focused and uncaring of others, it's gratifying to remember a man who was so genuinely warm and good. The Washington Post in 2017 proclaimed President Carter the most affable living president when a video spread on social media of him shaking hands with everyone on a flight from Atlanta to Washington. President Carter made a huge impact once retiring. Talented Broadway performers are remembered for their kindness. Theologians challenge the way we view the divine in our responsibility to the world and the oppressed. The theme that bubbled up for me this year was appreciating the good qualities of those who had success in their chosen field, but may be most remembered for their kindness and humility. I didn't mention that my dad was an airline gate agent for years, a favorite of his coworkers and passengers. Once an empty nester, my mom cheerfully and knowledgeably helped couples choose items to list on their bridal registry at a department store. But, like Broadway stars and at least one former president, their kindness outshone their accomplishments in their chosen field. I couldn't really decide how to end this sermon today, but this poem came to my mind as I wandered the aisles of H-E-B yesterday. I had read it for years, but it has a much more profound resonance for me today. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you lived. This is to have succeeded. Amen.